program with Leah Eskin, author of the just-published historical novel, Like Wafers in Honey. She will be joined in conversation with Rabbi Stephen Stark Lowenstein of Glencoe's Temple on Shalom. Thanks very much to the Glencoe Bookstall for being here tonight. You may purchase a copy of Like Wafers in Honey from their associate Nicole there, and Leah will be happy to sign it after the program if you haven't already purchased one. Now let me introduce our author. Leah Eskin is a journalist and author who always says that she writes about food and other urgent matters. Many of you may know her from her award-winning column Home on the Range, which ran in the Chicago Tribune for nearly 20 years. In 2014, Leah transformed those columns into a memoir, Slices of Life, a food writer cooks through many a conundrum. Its 200-plus recipes and stories included moving day potatoes, beach house spaghetti, dead microwave ratatouille, and fallen child meal squares. The library was thrilled to be an early stop on her book tour then, and now, as we celebrate her debut novel. We're also our moderator, Rabbi Stephen Stark. Before he was appointed senior rabbi of Shalom in 2002, Rabbi Steve spent 7 years as the associate rabbi at Temple Shalom in Chicago, which is the largest Reform congregation in Illinois. He's a talented chaplain, preacher, and youth worker with experience in Jewish camping, and has worked with senior members of the Temple on issues regarding adulthood and aging. He's also an author. In 2010, he published For the Love of Being Jewish, and in 2012, For the Love of Israel. He loves to travel and leads congregational missions regularly to Cuba and to Israel. Please hold your questions until Rabbi Steve gives the signal. Leah and Steve, I will now turn the evening over to you.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Grace. This is very exciting for me. I've never talked in a library. I've only been shushed in a library. Literally, my son just called, and I said, "Look where I am. I'm allowed to talk." He goes, "Don't get shushed." So this is huge for me. I've lived in this community for 24 years, and I'm talking in the library. This is great. So, quick show of hands. The book just came out. Let's give Leah a huge round of applause. What do you think? Leah, what do you think? Leah. It's great to meet an author. It's great to know that people are, kind of delving into books. The story behind this book is really amazing. And I know that some of you, it just came out a week ago, a little more than a week ago. So some of you weren't able to read it. I was lucky to get an advance copy. So quick show of hands. How many of you have actually read the book? Thank you. Thank you. I will tell you, spoiler alert, I've never been so hungry reading a book in my life, because every 3 pages there's a recipe, and I want this. So when I read the book, it was actually called The Lost Recipes of Stella Fortuna, and then with a sticker that says, new title, Like Wafers in Honey. So tell us the origin story of the book, because it's really amazing. It just Stella, Stella's all about the luck of Stella Fortuna's luck and fortitude and endure. In many ways, this was your Stella Fortuna moment. This book just kind of felt like manna from heaven. This book just kind of fell into your lap.
It did. So the book is a novel, and but I should say, in addition, it is based on the life of a real person. So it's very accurate to the story of this woman's life, but it's told in novel form. And she was named Edda Servi Machlin. She, should I give a little background? Yeah, she grew up in this tiny town called Pitigliano in Tuscany, which is a really unusual place in that at the time that she was growing up in the 20s, it had a 400-year continuous history of a Jewish population, and a very vibrant Jewish population. There's a synagogue, there's two schools, there's a library, there's a mikveh, there's this whole culture of Judaism.
In its heyday, there were 4,000 people in the town, and over 400 were Jewish. So like that, in Italy in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that's huge. That was a huge Jewish community.
Sure, and very unusual to have like this very large population that was Jewish and this very long history. This young girl, her dad was the rabbi, and her grandfather had been the rabbi, and her great-grandfather had been the rabbi, so she's very steeped in the culture, the Jewish culture of this town. Where our book starts, it's already 1943, and things are getting really rough for the Jewish community. The fascists have implemented laws such that her dad can no longer work, and her mom can no longer shop, and she can no longer go to school. Things are very circumscribed for the family and for all the Jews. And they're having dinner one night in their home, and for no reason they can fathom, their upstairs neighbor just suddenly shows up in their house, strangely holding a ricotta pudding, and she says, "You are in danger, pack and go." And our character, Stella Fortuna, and 3 of her teenage siblings pick up their backpacks essentially, and they walk out the door into the night, and the next 7 months is the story of them evading the fascists and the Nazis. So that is one of 2 storylines that are told in the book. And then in between the 2 storylines are, as Rabbi Steve mentioned, recipes.
So let's go back to the 2 storylines. So one is kind of a more modern day storyline, and
Yes.
one is the 7 months that this family and the 4 siblings and the parents and everything that happens to them, and kind of it's very much a kind of part is very much a Holocaust story. It's a story of people leaving and having to deal with partisans and things that happen along the way, and kind of their emotions of having to flee their homes and their desire to get back to their homes. I mean, that part is a very typical kind of Holocaust story of people leaving Europe and kind of having to start over. The other part is a really interesting part too, because it takes place kind of coming to the shores of America. Kind of that you don't find out until later that it's that same family, or you could have read the little, you could have read the Italian cookbook that it's based on, but it's also an amazing story. How do you, as an author, how do you write 2 stories in the same book?
Well, okay, so the second storyline, just to fill you in, is the story of this woman I mentioned, Edda Servi Machlin, who comes to this country in the late 50s. She's an immigrant. She's, completely fresh off the boat in every way. And soon after marries a nice professor from Columbia, and they moved to Westchester County, to a town called Croton-on-Hudson, where she is completely a fish out of water.
No different than Glencoe, probably.
Would this be a good spot to do a little reading?
What's that? Yeah, introduce us to her character. That would be great.
So I'll read a little chunk from the book to introduce you to what she is going through. This section's from 1960.
This was her first or second kind of. She arrives on the boat in the first one, so this is like the second or third kind of entry for her.
Yes. She's arrived in 58. Now it's 1960. She's newly married, newly moved to Croton. The salesmen were pesky as squirrels and twice as hard to scare off. Edda had no need of an Electrolux vacuum or a fuller brush. She drew down her eyebrows before opening the door, surprised to find not another hearty handshake, but a pie. The Pyrex plate was steadied by 2 limp woven squares. The squares were gripped by a young woman. Her name was Mary. She couldn't wait to meet her new next-door neighbor. Edda smoothed her forehead and invited Mary in. Mary just loved her accent. Was she Italian? Did she know that lots of folks in Croton had come from there back when they built the dam? Did she realize that there was a real Italian restaurant in town? They should all go. Saturday night, Mary and Joe, Edda and Gina, a double date. Pizzeria Grande was done up in red and white checks. The tablecloth felt like a raincoat and smelled of wet rag. It was decorated with a bottle of Chianti, already open. Edda touched the straw covering. We call this a fiasco, she said. Get out of here, shouted Joe. This place is the best. Edda ordered the chicken. What arrived first was a bowl of red sauce. Underneath, she found gluey ropes of pasta pocked with big balls of hamburger. What is this? She asked. Get out of here, shouted Joe. You've never had spaghetti and meatballs? She had not. So she's dealing with, a very different culture and a very different idea of what Italian food is. And so the second storyline follows Edda as she kind of makes her way in this new town and realizes that she's kind of on a quest to preserve the recipes that she grew up with and eventually teach them to her neighbors. And eventually she goes on to publish cookbooks, and she becomes very well known in her day. She was on public television. She's kind of the Julia Child of Jewish Italian cuisine. And
Anyone have her book, by the way? It is literally one of the best cookbooks. Like I remember my mom talking about the cookbook. Like it was transformative. It was an amazing piece of Jewish culture that kind of came to the world, and people really kind of were touched by it. So she dies in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. She dies in 2019, and that's where your publisher, and that's where the Stella Fortuna, that's where the luck kind of falls into your lap.
Yes.
For writing this book.
Yeah. So she did live a long life. She published a lot of books, and was very well known in certain communities. I would say mostly East Coast, mostly Jewish.
We were from Pittsburgh, so it
Okay.
made sense that my mom would have had that book, and
Yeah.
it was kind of, her sister from New York probably gave it to her.
Right. No, I did not grow up with these books. I had never heard of her. And I really didn't even know anything about Jewish Italian cuisine, despite being a food journalist and also being Jewish. So yeah, she dies in 2019. A friend of mine who I went to college with named Arthur Levine read her obit in the New York Times, and he got intrigued by her and her cookbooks, and he bought the books, and he started cooking for his son from the books. And it took him, I think, a couple of years to think of this, but he realized, like, wait, Arthur is a publisher, by the way. In fact, Arthur's had
Wait, I mean, that's
Okay. Arthur's
He
had
published
a
Harry Potter.
stellar career in publishing. Yeah, okay. Arthur discovered this writer named J.K. Rowling and has had this amazing career in publishing. And so I've always kind of, known what Arthur was up to, even though we don't keep in close contact. And apparently he also knew what I was up to. And he thinks, and after his career at Scholastic, he went on to start his own publishing company called Libby and Carino. And so Arthur comes up with the idea of doing a book about Edda Servi Machlin, and he calls me up one day, and a couple years ago, it was 2023, so 3 years ago. And he says, oh, I'm doing this book about this woman. She's this Italian Jewish cookbook author, and she wrote all these great cookbooks. And I said, that's great, Arthur. Sounds like a good book. And because I've worked in food journalism for a long time, I figured he wanted a referral. And I said, what do you need? Do you need a recipe tester, or do you need a photographer? I can, find someone for you. And he said, no. You're going to write the book. So yeah, that's how this book came.
So like you had never heard, like totally, it just fell, it was manna from heaven.
It was manna from heaven, there you go.
That's amazing. So I actually didn't know that he read the New York Times obituary. I went back and I read the New York Times obituary. It's an amazing, it really
It is,
is an amazing
yeah.
obituary. But it felt like I was reading your book, okay? Because oh my God, this is the story that I just read. This is the story, kind of that you really uncovered, and to me that was really, really very well done.
Thank you.
I have to ask you as a nonfiction journalist, what's it like to write fiction?
Yeah, well, it was very new, let's put it that way. One thing I appreciate about Arthur is that when he came to me with the project, he was very open to whatever form I wanted to do. He was like, well, this could be for kids, it could be for adults, it could be a biography, it could be a novel. And I was like, not a novel, I don't write novels. Obviously.
You do now.
Yeah, well, that's what I learned. I was like, sure, it would be a biography because it's about a real person. But in our conversations, and especially in conversation with my agent, who also went to college with us,
Where'd you go to college?
the three of us all went to Brown, and we were all on the same freshman hall.
That's amazing.
Strangely enough, yeah. So Kim convinced me to try it as fiction. And I think her thinking was, well, there is a lot of material because Edda Servi Machlin wrote these cookbooks. She wrote a memoir. She was pretty well known. There were stories about her in the Times prior to her obit. But there's a lot we don't know. And you're going to have an easier time kind of filling in the blanks if you write it as fiction. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. So I discovered two things. One is that it's fun. And the other is that it kind of gave me, more leeway to lean into more creative storytelling and some of the, and to be a little more creative with what these people thought because I could make it up. So yeah, it was fun.
That's amazing. To go back to character development, how does that happen in a book like this? Like, did you know all of the characters? Did they just develop as you wrote it? Did you know? And actually, let's use that as a chance to meet Stella.
Sure.
With
Yeah.
the passage from the book too. That
Sure.
would be great.
Yeah, let me read a little bit from Stella. So Stella's our other storyline. This is from, I told you that she picked up her bag and walked out the door. This is from a couple days later. They're just out in the woods trying to figure out what to do. They really have no plan. They spend one night with a peasant who they know, someone that their dad has helped for many years.
And Dad wrote a note.
Yes.
Dad wrote a note to, hey, watch over my kids or protect my kids if, and because he was a respected man in the community.
He was a respected man in the community. The peasants are not Jews. They were all Christians. But her dad and her grandfather before him had served as kind of a intermediary for the peasants. He was literate for one thing, and the peasants were illiterate. So he would go and help them read their mail or respond to their mail or negotiate with their landlords. And so he had relationships with many peasants in the area. And when the kids walk out the door, he writes a list of people he knows. And that does help them along the way. So the very first night, they spend the night with one of these people. The next night, they have no idea what they're doing. And there are 4 siblings, and right away they decide they're going to split up into 2 and 2 because they just figure no family's ever going to take 4 kids in. And it's a little weird, to have 4 kids. It's just too much to ask. So they've split up. Stella's with her oldest brother named Lello, and I'll just read you a little passage of what happens on that second day, November 28, 1943. Lello wasn't calm like Papa, nor wise like Mama, but he was her older brother, her oldest brother, and Stella felt secure tromping in his footsteps. He'd already roamed the nighttime woods doing something. He would find them a place to sleep somewhere. But they could hardly approach a strange hut, Hansel and Gretel style, and ask the startled peasants to house 2 fugitives. Lello knew a cave. The dry, The wide, dry caves below Pitigliano came in handy for playing house, setting up forts, or crouching during hide and seek. Craggy coves etched into the exterior walls of the village served as stables and storerooms. Far outside town, off sunken pathways, deep caverns exhaled the cold stench of ancient burial sites. She hoped it was a good cave. It's this way, said Lello, but Stella could tell from his staggered steps that he really wasn't sure. The fellows stashed some wine there, he said, on one of our missions. Rifles? Fellows? Missions? Stella kept quiet and followed. She peered into the trees. Every lost maiden, evil witch, shiny pomegranate, severed hand, talking bird, and magic elixir lurked. Were folk tales needlessly gruesome or somehow true? Here it is, said Lello, I think. He parted a thicket of bamboo, exposing a dark stone mouth, which he had to shimmy under. Stella shook off her pack and bent low, but her spine scraped against the teeth. She lay flat to the spongy soil, squinched her eyes shut, and wriggled into the dark. Cautiously, hands overhead, they stood. The air was cool and damp. It let off a sharp vinegar scent, like Regina's nesting box. They could see nothing. Stella sensed a soft flutter. She heard a soft voice. Someone's here, she shouted. No, said Lello, you're imagining. Someone's here, she insisted quietly. Lello let out a sigh. I'll waste one match, she offered. We'll find that stash of wine. Stella heard the scratch, smelled the sulfur, saw the flame. It took a moment for their pupils to contract. The walls of the cave were lined, top to bottom, with smaller caves. From each tiny cave peered 2 almond eyes. Stella screamed. She was scrambling for the opening when her brother grabbed her arm. Doves, he said. It's a dove cove. It took Stella a long time to slow the drumbeat in her chest, to agree to sit down, to lie down in the dark. Were the birds still staring with their almond eyes? Would they swoop down at her? They're asleep, said Lello. Now sleep. They both cast back to nights at home, each of which ended the same. Papa holding his hands above the heads of his children. May God make you good, he would say. Amen.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful. We were talking about character development. So how does that happen in a book like this? You have to develop Stella and then her siblings and then her parents and kind of people that they meet along the way. There's an Arthur in there.
Yes, there is an Arthur, yeah.
Name for your friend maybe? Or
that's his real name.
And I know, that's what I figured that out. Because you thank him in the acknowledgments. It says Arthur. So I'm like, oh, that's where she gets the...
No, actually, that character was really named Arthur.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, character development. Okay, so because there was a lot of material, fortunately, Edda Servi Machlin wrote a memoir herself, and she also gave interviews to the Shoah Foundation at USC, where they record testimony of survivors of the Holocaust and other genocides. And so did her brother and her sister. So I had a lot of material to work with. And
so Arthur was a real character from their stories.
Yes, wow. Yes. In addition to being the name of my real life editor. Anyway, I did have a lot of material to work with. On the other hand, of course, as a novel, I had to develop the characters into characters. And I have to say, I did make up one entire character. Everyone in the book is real. Some of the names are changed, but they're all real people that she remembers. But I made up a character named Sfocata, who is a sheep. And she's, and her name means fuzzy. I actually had a cat named Fuzzy when I was growing up. So, and I needed someone for her to confide in. And she doesn't really have any friends when she's on the run, and she really can't have any friends because who knows, who's trustworthy and who isn't.
Right.
Yeah. So even though real life Stella Servi Machlin hated animals, she apparently said the only creatures she hated more than people were dogs. She was a very unfriendly person. But I gave her a sheep as a friend because she does spend a lot of time in the barn, and I needed someone for her to talk to. And so she confides in the sheep.
So as we're reading it, we don't know kind of who's made up or who's real, kind of it's developing for us. So kind of that helps to know that they're based on real people.
Yeah.
Going back to the two stories within the same book, how'd you write it? Did you write one and then the other? Did you, kind of how'd you divide, in the book it's very easy, chapter 1, chapter 2, it's
Right.
by dates. Did you write all of Stella's book and then go back and kind of fill in the years of
That is such a good question, and the perplexed look on my face is that I can't remember. Boy, I spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time researching, and then I spent a lot of time organizing, and it was a very complicated book to organize because it has these three parts. We have Stella, we have Edda, and we have recipes. And so I had all these like little 3x5 cards, and they were color coded, and then I had all these like charts of timelines, and then I tried to like shuffle them, like here's how it's all gonna, anyway, it was endless.
and is this online? Is this on a computer
No.
or this
Well, I used a computer program that's new to me that I do recommend if any of you are writing a novel. It's called Scrivener. Very handy for organizing. On the other hand, when I got to the 3x5 cards, I had to print them out and have them physically in hand and like sort them out on a giant table because I couldn't figure out a better way to do it. And my initial structure was a little bit different than this ended up, but okay, in answer to your question,
Because you follow a pattern. You have Stella, you have a recipe, and then you have Edda.
yeah, I think I wrote it that way.
Okay, and okay, so you follow.
Yeah, I think that's how I wrote it. I wrote, like the Stella chapter and then a recipe that links to that chapter, and then an Edda chapter that does go chronological, but it's not directly linked. So that's how.
So let's talk about the recipes.
Yeah.
Someone described you as the poet laureate of recipes. Okay, that's quite a title. And so you've spent your life around recipes.
Yes.
Food connects all of us.
Yes.
It's why I do my job. It's all about the food.
Right.
And by the way, we do have an amazing little snack coming up after.
We do.
Not only can I talk in the library, I can eat in the library. This is like too much. You're going to spoil me, Grace. So talk about the recipes. I mean,
Sure.
because that's a big. It was a part of your first book. It was part of this book. It was part of Edda's original book.
Right.
So kind of how'd that come about, and kind of what were you looking for in the recipes and why these recipes? There's about 40. By the way, there's literally about 40 recipes kind of spread out through the book.
Yeah, each chapter has one recipe, and there's 43 recipes, 43 chapters. So and I have spent my career writing about food and developing recipes, and I think that's why Arthur thought of me for this book. And yes, I love the way food tells stories and the way food connects all of us, and how the act of cooking in her story, the act of cooking and remembering food and remembering the recipes she grew up with is, really saved her life twice. Once when she was on the run, just thinking about these foods that she grew up with gave her this kind of purpose and identity. And then later when she came to this country, resurrecting those recipes again gave her a sense of purpose and identity. And I love stories with food in them, and I love stories with recipes in them. She did publish 4 different cookbooks in her lifetime. I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I will. So when I first heard about Edda Servi Machlin, of course I ran out and got her book. They're out of print, unfortunately. All of her books are out of print. But I got one off eBay or something. And I'm like, this is great. And my long-suffering husband has put up with me testing recipes on him for decades. And I was like, great, we're going to try this out. And I just picked out 2 recipes. It was spring. I was like, ooh, let's do the salmon. Let's do the peas. That sounds great. And I cooked these 2 recipes and I served them. And Bob took a bite of each and like put his hand to his head and he said, these are the very flavors that gave me migraines as a kid. Not an auspicious start. So they needed a little work, the recipes.
Well, the book says that they're all updated.
They
so
are all updated.
Thank you for that.
They are all updated. They're updated in a couple ways. One is that we cook differently now, right? I mean, I'm very devoted to my Cuisinart, and I use the microwave sometimes, and we all have these fancy ovens, and I love the mixer. I don't need to mix everything by hand. Actually, I borrowed Rose's mixer to test a lot of the recipes. I even use the mixer to make my pasta dough. Anyway, so we've updated our equipment. We've also updated our ingredients. Like, things taste different now. I think, meat is much leaner than it was way back when, and vegetables are maybe not as strongly flavored as they used to be. So everything sort of has to be adapted. And I also think our taste is different. And these recipes, to make them palatable to my husband and I, I definitely amped up some of the flavors. So they are inspired by her recipes, but they're updated. And I just want to tell you about one recipe, which is called sofrati. It's a pastry. She made a lot of desserts, which I love because I love making desserts. And I guess the joke is, like, Jews eat a lot of sweet foods to sweeten the bitter times, and that's probably true. So sofrati is a specialty of the town of Pitigliano. And if you go today to Pitigliano as a tourist, you can buy sofrati. It's, in the little shops and in the bakeries, and, that you have it packaged up. It's a long stick-like pastry. Inside are the nuts and honey, and outside is a flaky pastry. And it's shaped like a long stick on purpose. And this stick is meant to resemble the sticks used to evict Jews. Crazy enough, this is the town pastry in Pitigliano. And the word sofrati means evictions. So anyway, I find this fascinating and iconic. Unfortunately, it's also delicious, and I brought some for us to taste later.
So I have a book to donate to the library.
Oh.
It's called Pitigliano. I'm sure you have a travel section, right? Okay. But so I saw some Shalom people. Anyone go on our last trip to Italy? So we stopped in Pitigliano after we went to. We started in Venice and we went to Florence. We ended in Rome, and on the bus from Florence to Rome, you stop in this small little town. It's called Little Jerusalem because of this rich Jewish heritage. And I remember looking at it on our itinerary, saying, "We're going to go there, okay?" And we tasted it. I'm pretty sure the writer of the cookbook still had family. There were 3, a cousin and a nephew or something that were still. There were still 3 Jews living in Pitigliano.
Yeah.
And did you get to go Did you get to go? Did you get to site visit?
I did. I'm amazed that you went. That's amazing. Yeah. So when I first, was talking about this project with my editor, I feel like after I said yes.
I'm going to actually send the book around just because the pictures are actually beautiful. Because it really is. It's on a cliff and it overlooks the water. I mean, it just is really a remarkable place to visit.
Yeah, and I think it's also called Little Jerusalem not only, as you said, for this long Jewish history, but also because it's like Jerusalem. It's white. It's built out of white stone. So the second thing I said to Arthur was, "Oh, well, there's a travel budget, right?" And he said no. So then, that's where we needed Kim to come in and negotiate. So there ended up being a travel budget, and Bob and I went to Pitigliano. And what was I telling you about? What did you ask me?
Soprati, just.
Soprati. Oh, and the people left there, yeah. So it was a fascinating place to go. And of course, you know, I felt it was really important to go there and see what it looked like and smelled like and tasted like. And
you describe it beautifully in the book. I mean, there are
you.
parts where, you know, kind of, I felt like I was back there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unique place. It's definitely different than anywhere I've ever been. It's all built out of this stone called tuff, which is kind of left over from volcanic eruption, and it's very lightweight and very light colored. And as you said, it has this kind of physical,
Beauty,
you know,
uniqueness.
right. Well, it has these sort of remnants of the Jewish culture, of all those Jews that you mentioned that used to live there. No one was left basically after the war. And in the 90s, one person moved back named Edda Servi, a distant relative of Edda Servi. And when we were there, she was still alive and living there, her son and her nephew. So 3 Jews in the town of Pitigliano.
What surprised you the most during the writing?
Oh, surprised me. Well, it was just so much fun. I really just had a great time doing it. And
How long did it take?
well, the whole project took 2.5 years. So I would say the first year was research, second year was writing. And that was pretty quick, I would say, for how much work was involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But your editor wanted a faster timeline.
He did. He originally wanted it in 1 year, and I was like, no, that's just not an option.
Your prose style is built around exquisitely accurate metaphors, mainly based on feminine creativity. Hiding in the forest, Stella feels embraced by the pine trees. Their, quote, green needles and resin scent, as comforting as Nana's quilt. When she and her brother take refuge in a cave filled with doves, she feels the birds, quote, almond eyes, staring at them. The act of knitting, the knits, their faces open and attentive were children. The pearls, gazing away, were adults. The fabric formed a family, a tribe, a people bound together. Cut one stitch, unravel the whole. So such beautiful metaphors. What leads you to use so many metaphors? What leads you to to that prose style?
Well, thank you for noticing that it's feminine. I appreciate that. One thing about the real Edda Servi Machlin is that she loved crafts. Like, she loved not just cooking, but also sewing and knitting and painting and kind of any creative endeavor. And all those things, I think, were kind of solace to her. And I love knitting and cooking and all that. And there's a long history of embroidery in this town. And in fact, the cover that was on the Torah in the synagogue of Pitigliano was embroidered by someone a predecessor of Modigliani, whose name she signed Modigliani. So after I did a lot of research and finished reading about her and reading her work, I was like, well, you know, I kind of loved all these like sort of feminine handicrafts that pervaded her life. And I think I link that to cooking too, you know, sort of women's work in the kitchen, you know, holding families together, nourishing families. And I wanted to really lean into all of those crafts. So I thought it suited the material.
I would recommend a book called Isabella's Way. My sister-in-law is an author, and she also is writing historical fiction, but she takes our family's story, and so the family was in Germany, and she traced it back a generation or two, and it was the Yeshurun family that was very big into embroidery in Lisbon. Oh. So she actually follows this path, again, making up characters along the way, but really remarkable story. And so much of it is about embroidery, her recent book is about embroidery,
Oh.
so.
I would
it's,
love to read that.
I'll get you a copy.
Yeah, actually, I do have a little snippet to read about cooking if this is a
Please
good
do,
time.
please do.
Yeah, so obviously cooking is a big theme in the book, and it was a huge part of her life when she came to this country. But of course, during the period where she was hiding in the woods, it's not like they were doing a ton of gourmet cooking. They were basically, out in the woods, they were living on really weeds. But when they were with peasants, which was much of the time, it was basically a lot of polenta, which is a food she had never had, even though it's very common for the peasants to eat polenta. It was something that her family from the little town, that was not considered, something they ate. But anyway, I thought a lot about cooking and what it meant for her. And this little chunk is from a scene towards the end of the book and towards the end of the war. This crazy situation happens where those who survive from her family are in a hotel in a different small town, and they are pretending to be the head of the fascist organization from that town. And this group of, this all happened, this group of Nazi officers shows up and moves in. So then they are not only these like pretend fascists, but they are the pretend fascist hosts of the Nazis. And they have to host these people for several days. So it's a crazy situation. And Edda, being the cook in the family, has to cook for them. The Servis took up their roles as the fascist family Leopoldo. Papa hosted, Mama tidied up, Edda cooked. But what? The putrid stew her family had faced in that camp? The weeds she had chewed in the woods? Bavarian cream spiked with poison? She set an onion on the chopping block and cleaved it cleanly. Sharp and bitter shot up her nose, stung her eyes, and flowed down her cheeks. Strength poured through her arms and into her hands, which seemed to have a plan of their own. They diced the onion, smashed the garlic, stewed both in a pool of golden olive oil, pried open a jar of tomatoes, squeezed the red bulbs into the skillet, and set the sauce to simmering. Now Edda turned her attention to fresh ricotta mixed with flour, eggs, and spring spinach. Her palms rolled the gnocchi into tiny spheres. Her whole body relaxed. Cooking was an act of love. She would serve her family her deepest affections, no matter who else commandeered the meal.
Beautiful, beautiful. Which character did you feel most connected with when you were writing?
Well, okay, I have a special affection for grown-up Edda, who, as I've mentioned, is not that nice a person. She's got a real sharp edge. She's got a real edge. And I have a grandma, also named Edda, though not Italian, Hungarian. And she had a real edge. And so I kind of channeled my grandma in writing the Edda sections. And in fact, I tossed in some of my grandma's phrases and malapropisms. My grandma always, every recipe said, wrap in thin foil. So we got some of that in there. And I had to fight the copy editors. No, don't correct it. So I had fun writing those sections.
But you dedicate the book to your mom,
I do.
who taught me to cook.
I do. Yeah, my mom taught me to cook, and she taught me to love cooking and food, and so yes, it's dedicated to her.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to ask one or two more questions, and then I'm going to open it up to anyone who has questions that you might want to ask. But now that you've been a very successful journalist and now a novelist, what's the difference between the two? And is there one that you're more drawn to? Is there one that is more exciting for you?
Well, I think I'm really liking the fiction because it's new, and I feel like it's got more reach. Like you can kind of go further into the crevices of your brain doing that. And so, yeah, I think I'd like to pursue more of that.
You could be unencumbered by the facts. And
Unencumbered by the facts.
Just write what you want.
Exactly. Although this is full of facts, and I have to say, thank goodness for all the people who helped inform. I relied on history readers and astronomy readers and chicken readers and a wool spinner, and many people helped me make sure that the facts are correct, even though it's fiction.
Got it. The title is evocative, like wafers and honey, which is a direct quote from the Torah.
Yes.
The original title, The Lost Recipes of Stella Fortuna. Tell us about the new title. Tell us about kind of why that title.
Well, like Wafers and Honey is the title I wanted originally. Then for a little while, my publisher won with The Lost Recipes of Stella Fortuna, but in the end, I won. So I got the title I wanted. So the phrase, like Wafers and Honey, comes from Exodus. It's from obviously the time when the Israelites are wandering in the desert. They got nothing, right? They got nowhere to live. They got no possessions. They have no food. And every night, God frosts the ground with manna. And in the morning, they scoop up the manna and they eat it, and it tastes like wafers and honey. And I love the phrase because, manna is a gift. And Edda Servi Machlin, for all her sharp edges, recognized that the reason she survived was because strangers were generous with her and gave her the gift of food. And that was what allowed her to survive. And I think she always felt grateful. And so that's what
It's really beautiful. As a rabbi, everyone always says, the great miracle of the Exodus, the parting of the sea. And I've come to understand that the truly great miracle was the manna. The Red Sea only happened once. The manna happened every single day. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the amazing miracle. And we have to embrace the everydayness of the miracles, not the once. So not the once. And it was just so beautiful. Kind of you explained it at the very, you mentioned like wafers and honey at the very end of the book, and it just kind of, to me, it brought it all together.
So glad.
So thank you for that. My last question is, so what do you do next?
Okay, I'll tell you the true answer. Don't know. I have a couple ideas for books, but we'll see.
Well, maybe something will just drop.
Yes.
Any questions? Yes.
So are your recipes all of historic relevance, or are some of these just a compilation of your background as a food editor?
These are all inspired by the original recipes, and these are all representative of Italian Jewish cuisine. And people often ask me, like, well, what is Italian Jewish cuisine? Is it like meatballs in your chicken soup? And no. So I think Edda would have said it's the recipes are identified as either meat or dairy. So if you are someone who keeps kosher, you can, follow those rules. So obviously there's no pork. Very vegetable forward, and the kind of stars of Italian Jewish cuisine are artichokes first and foremost, eggplant, fennel. And one thing I learned is that these vegetables that we're all familiar with and love in Italian cooking really came to us through Italian Jews. They were the ones who really championed those vegetables. A lot of fresh herbs, fresh pasta, homemade everything, and relatively mild flavors. So those were some sort of the hallmarks. And hopefully, each recipe in here is representative of some part of that cuisine. And there's also one recipe, I hope, for every Jewish holiday.
Did you test the recipes?
I did.
So were all 43 of these recipes in Edda's original book, or you adopted, you kind of,
Yeah, in some way or another. Some are kind of compilations. Like I think my favorite recipe in the whole book is for a fettuccine with artichokes, and it kind of combines fried artichokes, marinated artichokes, and homemade pasta all into one dish. It's like all the most delicious things together. So that's not really one of her recipes, but I took like 3 of her recipes and stuck them together.
and to me, the fun part of reading the chapters of Stella's life, like you'll mention fennel, kind of something happens with the fennel, and then kind of 3 pages later, you'll get to the recipe and it'll have fennel in it. So
Yeah.
to me, I kind of played the game of, oh, I wonder what, that's what the recipe's going to be about, and kind
That's
of
good.
sometimes I was right. So
Excellent.
I love that. Other questions? Yes.
So I'm interested in the process. You're in Pitigliano, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep.
So you're there as a novelist, but you've been a journalist.
Yeah.
So how did you approach being there? Did you approach it as a journalist, trying to unearth facts, trying to unearth stories, or were you just trying to soak things in to bring
Well,
color to the story? Or?
Yeah, some of each. I mean, largely it was atmospheric. Like I just, wanted to know what does it smell like and taste like and feel like to be there. We had a couple amazing things happen. One is that, so she lived in the ghetto, which for 200 years had literally been a gated ghetto that Jews were locked into every night.
The word ghetto actually comes from Italy, by the way, from
Exactly.
Venice originally,
Yeah.
but kind of we're not that far from Venice, so kind of it was one of the early ghettos.
Yeah, exactly. When she was growing up, it was not a locked ghetto. It was just a neighborhood, kind of a poor neighborhood, a very poor neighborhood. When she was growing up, it was, a lot of crime and prostitution those were her neighbors. So when we were going, I just kind of looked up on it. I was like, hey, Airbnb ghetto, right? And I found a place called Pension of the Ghetto or something. I was like, great, we'll stay there. And crazily enough, was in the same building where she had grown up. Yes. And around the kind of front of the building was her home, and someone actually let me in, so I got to see it and see the synagogue, etc. I think the most interesting part of our quick trip was that. So part of the story that we haven't gotten to.
I don't know how quick yours was. Ours was like 3 hours.
We were like a week.
It's not,
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot to see.
Right, although it has become a bit of a tourist destination like that. So I didn't explain this part of the plot, but when Stella and her siblings walk out the door, her dad, who's the rabbi, stands up and gives a little speech, and he says, "A rabbi must stay with his congregation, and I am going to, stay and protect the people of this town." So the teenagers walk out the door. He and his wife and little Mario, who's 9 years old, stay. And the next day, he leads the remaining Jews of the town to the town square, and they, stand in front of the police officer, and then he leads them onto a bus, and the bus takes them to a concentration camp. And this camp is set up, this is all true, by the Bishop of Grosseto, another town nearby, in his summer home. And so he has a summer home, and there's a seminary next door, so he lives in the summer home, it's a villa, and in the seminary, they set up this concentration camp. So her parents and little brother end up in this camp. So of course, when I was in Pitigliano, I'm like, yeah, I want to see all this stuff in town, but I want to see that concentration camp too, right? So I'd heard about it. I knew it was on something called Via del Seminario, right? Seminary Street. And I was like, oh, how hard can it be to find? So we rent a little Fiat. We go driving through these crazy, windy streets, roads way out to the countryside, and a couple hours away. And we get to Via del Seminario, and there's nothing. And we drive around. We can't find it. We go into town. Everyone's taking a
Siesta.
Whatever
the Italian
word is for siesta. And finally I found one kind of clubhouse, 2 old guys, and I described to them what I'm after, and they're like, oh yeah, and drives me a little map. And we go out to a different road. And we go sort of bushwhacking through the woods, and there's a fence and a sign with a big hand on it. Like, I know what that means. And so we go through the fence, and there it is, this abandoned villa and this abandoned seminary. And guess what? It was not locked. And we were able to chomp around and see this place where the family had been held and see the, what's left of this place. So that was some good reporting.
Yes.
Yeah, the journalist question. I think we have time for a couple more.
What do you want us to leave with after reading the book?
Like you, I want you to be hungry and, and go home and make a meal and share it with the people you love the most. I mean, I hope it's an affirmation of cooking and sharing food and letting that be a bridge across, all kinds of adversity.
Beautiful. Other questions? Yes.
How do you know when to finish the book?
That is, and this is a journalist question too, that is the beauty of the deadline. When it's due is when it's done.
That's good. I like that. Any other questions?
Yeah, spoiler alert here, everyone in the family survived. There were 7 of them, and they all survived, I would say, by luck.
I think if I remember, distant cousins, other members of the family died.
Yes.
Kind of, and Italy had a small, a small Jewish population, and certainly lost lives during the Holocaust, who were relative. But in your core story, they all survived.
They all survived, yeah. It was through luck, and it was amazing.
Do they stay in Europe?
Well, some of them did. Some stayed in. The family tried to return to Pitigliano. It didn't go very well. They didn't feel welcome, and there weren't enough Jews to really have a community. And they ended up moving to Florence. The whole family moved to Florence, and then eventually the girls leave and go to America, basically to find husbands. And her brothers stayed in Italy. And believe it or not, Mario, the 9-year-old who ended up in the concentration camp, he is alive now. He's like, I don't know, pushing 100. He has never talked about his experiences and won't. So, sorry. The 9-year-old is still alive. He lives in somewhere in Italy. And he had a career as a math professor, but he's never talked about his experiences and won't. Never would.
Oh my.
Yeah. But other members of the family did give interviews, and I was able to get a lot of information. And other people who were in that camp have given interviews. Actually, Primo Levi was in that camp. So there was a lot of material strong.
I'm reminded of the quote that Elie Wiesel used in his book called Gates of the Forest. And at the end of the book, Elie Wiesel writes, "Why did God invent people?" And the answer is because God loves stories. And I think that's one of the most beautiful. You actually, you begin with a quote from the Haggadah, that we are commanded to teach it to our children, and you do a beautiful, beautiful job. And even if we were all sages, it would be a commandment upon us to tell the story of the Exodus. So kind of, you did an amazing job of telling this story. So thank you.
Thank you.